Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Go 24/7 podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is an injured Shea Dixon. Shay, how are you? How are you doing today?
I put a sprained ankle onto my resume of post signing day. I just stepped down wrong, and the ball of my ankle was just straight onto the ground. So I feared that I was headed the Xavier Pinson route, potentially the Adam Miller route, but
Oh
I would
man.
I would qualify it more according to the local urgent care as a Brandon Murray type injury.
Okay.
You're gonna have to play through it. You're not gonna look like your normal self, but we need you.
Yeah, you're too important to the team to like just not play. But then,
Yes.
sometimes you'll just be like, "What's wrong with Shay today? Shay's over there, kind of limping.
Did
Are
Shea
those
sleep
crutches?"
half the day? What is he doing?
Right? So, but no, we're here. We're all good. I guess I'll plug early on. If you haven't checked out the re-ranking video I did earlier today, at the day we're recording this at least, check that out. Spent a good amount of time on it. Stayed up late. It was one of those nights where I was just like not tired, and so I just did like the whole video overnight. And so yeah, did 14 through 1, my personal rankings of how I like them, and yeah, that was fun. I it was so late. I reached over to turn the light off at the very end, my lamp, and I broke my lamp. So that's how you know it was just a late night.
Just in the lab all night grinding. Is this one of those like memes where it's like tired and you're like the recruiting class is good, and then wired it's like up till 5 a.m. breaking them down in order?
Yeah, Wired, Landon Ibietta's top 7.
There you go. Check
There,
plug the rankings. That's the perfect
yeah,
one.
there you go. So yeah, we have plenty to talk about with signing day. We'll get through all of that, including where does LSU go next with its 5 remaining scholarships. But Shay, it was a quieter day, but we were kind of wondering if it was going to be like that. I know on the last podcast we did, we were talking about what if they get 5, what if they get 4. They end up with 2. They end up with Harold Perkins and Jalen Davis Robinson, 2 defensive players that I like a lot, but still. You have a couple misses on there, or at least players that opted to go in another direction. Danny Lewis, um, Jacoby Matthews, Trevante Citizen. What do we? How do you feel about the class overall, and just how that day kind of played out?
Yeah, we'll talk about sort of the overall breakdown here in the next segment, but I thought that in terms of hit or misses, that they came out fine. And I think Harold Perkins goes a long way. If you land a top 5 player in the country on the second signing day, then it wasn't a complete wash for you. And obviously, they addressed a position of need with Davis Robinson out of Waxahachie at cornerback, who I'll kind of touch briefly on him. I mean, he's a guy that is a legit 100-meter 10.6 guy, 10.5 time. I think he's got one right in that range for a PR. He's got a good 200 meter. So you're getting speed, and a guy who's probably put in the program and try to develop him. It seems like he's played a lot of his best football over, as a junior and again as a senior, and that's when his recruitment kind of took off. So you address the need there, but getting Harold Perkins, I thought, makes it all okay, right? Because you had already set your base, and we'll talk about more in this in the next segment, but you were good on the high school guys in December. You had a couple more now. You crushed the transfer portal. You still have some extra spots available. So to leave that day with Harold Perkins, a guy that throughout his whole process, everybody said, there's no telling where he's going to go. Like in the final weeks of his process, people were like speculating would he go to Jackson State and be like the Travis Hunter of the early signing period and make this big splash. And I had said even in the weeks leading up to it becoming evident that Perkins was going to be in the mix for LSU and he backs off the A&M commitment, I promised every day on the board, I was like, I'll make a prediction, but I'll never put in a crystal ball pick. And the night before signing day, and that day I put in a crystal ball pick for Harold Perkins because outside of Davis Robinson, I felt as confident on him to LSU as anyone. And that was sort of the feeling you got going through signing day was between coaching changes, wholesale coaching changes, head to top your entire staff minus your line coach,
Yeah.
and then a signing day, a second signing day where NIL is really way more so than December in the forefront of a lot of these conversations regarding Louisiana guys. And look, you can go. Jordy Collada had Gordon McKernan on his show, and Gordon's been sort of the the booster, or however you want to look at it, the money man who's pushed a lot of these deals through here at the start for LSU, whether that's football or other sports on campus. And he said with Trevante Citizen that Citizen was calling guys on the team asking, how many NIL deals do you have? What are they worth? And as he talked to different buddies on the team, the answer back was a lot of time was either I don't have any, or maybe I don't have a ton. And I think you're just finding out the difference between these guys who are in college right now and didn't deal with all that as recruits, and the guys who are recruits right now dealing with it all for the first time. And to say that these guys, Citizen, Jacoby Matthews, that NIL deals didn't play any part at all in kind of their process would be naive, right? I mean, we've got a guy like Gordon McKernan who's a part of these deals saying, I can tell you that here's kind of the dialogue behind the scenes. And I don't think that at the end of the day, when you look back and you say, okay, we lost out on a running back, well, you've got a top group of 5 running backs that you feel pretty good about. You took Noah Kane. It sucks to obviously lose a tight end in Danny Lewis because you don't have any. That was one of the biggest issues. And then Matthews is no doubt maybe arguably one of the best players in the state, if not number one. He's in that top 2, 3, 4 range of talented upper echelon college ready guys. But again, we saw the class A&M put together. This isn't some knock on Brian Kelly. Now they're going to have to figure out answers here to move forward in this NIL landscape. But A&M signed 7 5-stars, and Jacoby Matthews isn't even a 5-star. So like 7 5-stars didn't go into Jacoby and them. They were doing, they weren't just going into Louisiana and plucking a guy. They were going to every state in the country and picking the best guys. I mean, Shamar Stewart committed to them as well out of Florida on signing day. So I think it's a new era that we're moving into, and we'll have to see how it pans out over the next year. And for people like us, when I have to sit around and predict what a 17, 18-year-old kid is going to do with one of the biggest decisions of his life down at the end, I think we've learned that the December signing period, somewhat easy to predict. Those guys they have their offers, they're ready to make a decision, they've made their visits. February signing day, if it's the guy, I said it before, if it's the guys who have the same offers they did in December and haven't picked up any new ones, they're letting their process play out longer for a certain reason. And I'm not always going to 100% believe it's because they just can't decide. I think that they want to continue to explore avenues like NIL and different things, and that's fine. But I think it makes for guessing where they're going to go, like all the way up till the 11th hour, tough, because we see people like Gordon McKernan saying, even on signing day morning, we're having conversations with different guys in their camps about what we can offer, what they could get once they get to campus. And that's just an element that's never been above the table. And because of that, it makes it way more difficult to project at the very end who's going to get this guy and who isn't.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The crazy thing is, like you said, the December signees, I think we can go on year after year and kind of have a good feel about, because those are guys that are committed probably in June, July, August. Those are guys who have been committed for a long time, know the staff. I mean, the December class this year obviously didn't even know the staff and they still committed. So once Kelly and them and the coaching staff kind of gets comfortable, I think the December signing day will be straightforward as it was this past year. But the February signing day, to throw in the NIL stuff, and I mean, we could spend a whole hour on it just talking like what the ramifications are and how the impact on LSU that NIL can have. But just looking at it from that perspective, you start to kind of realize there's a whole nother factor in this game that we and LSU, I mean, nobody has kind of treaded that water before. And so for a guy like Trevante Citizen to be calling people and asking about NIL stuff is telling. It's very telling. So where does LSU go from there? I don't know. I obviously at this point next year we're going to be in a very different situation with NIL. We will have know a lot more. There will probably be a lot more involvement from the LSU guys like Gordon, and that we'll be able to be like, okay, this is supposed to go this way, this is supposed to go that way when it comes to NIL. At this moment, I'm just trying to absorb information. I'm just here like trying to learn about this, like you said, Trevante Citizen calling players. Like, is that happening with every single recruit? Is that like how is LSU handling it? I'm just trying to be a sponge right now because this is difficult to kind of navigate. Because, like you said, I mean, still kind of new to the recruiting scene, so I haven't been in it like as long. But still, it felt like it was always kind of a formula. It was always kind of a routine every single year. It's like, okay, we get to know the recruits, get to know their families. They like their visit, they might go here. Now there's a whole different aspect of it that we can't really quantify, at least early on.
Yeah. No, and think about too, I think that coaches, even more so before, will be enticed to sign everybody in December. Because I think
Yeah.
if you go beyond that, you're getting into another month and a half of, okay, is this guy now really, moving up the price of NIL deals and shopping things around, or can we just get it done in December? And we're not worried about it. We go through bowl prep, we move on to January. If you have to close on a couple kids, you do, but you don't ever want to have to risk kind of the bulk of your class or a lot of the headliners being in that February period if you can help it. And I think that coaches of the early signing period happened for a reason. These coaches wanted to be able to say, hey, let me sign all these guys so January doesn't turn into some roller coaster where half my guys are getting plucked that have been committed for a year. So December provided that avenue for them to get it done. Early enrollees, go ahead and enroll. Guys who aren't, sign and kind of put that final stamp on your recruiting process. And I can promise you, just from talking to coaches, not just at LSU, but other schools, that all of them are saying, look, hey, next December is when we want to have everyone inked. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I talked to one coach at another school's top 25 program, and they weren't really involved at all at the signing day in February, the second one. And they sat back that day and were texting. They were like, this is nuts to watch. And they were like, I can only imagine the NIL stuff that's going on behind the scenes the day of signing day. And I said, man, I know. I finally came up for some air. I said, how did y'all do? And he said, we didn't deal with anybody today. We did it all in December because we knew that if you have guys that are going into January that aren't late bloomers, that you're going to be caught in some sort of, what does the NIL deals look like? What can you do for me? And I think that moving forward, coaches are going to really be eager to lock everybody up in December
Yeah.
and not really involve yourself in February as best you can. And again, we're talking about NIL deals and driving up the price, and it's legal, right? I
Yes.
mean, so I don't want it to come across as like completely, oh, this seems like a dark alley type stuff, and maybe it is viewed that way still because, as you said, we're not totally educated on how this is even working. Like, are all these kids calling everyone on the team and finding out how much they're getting, and asking these other schools, what can you pay me? And we'll learn more about that as time goes on. And look, we'll talk a ton about this offseason, but everyone is saying, well, where's LSU in these NIL deals? LSU has been, I think, a sponge for the better part of this process of understanding between federal legislation, state laws, meeting with different boosters, what all you can do, because you're still having to remember too, these people give money for buildings. They give money
Yep.
to
Mm-hmm.
be, the primary sponsor at, whether it's a walk-ons or a McDonald's or, whatever it is, to be a title sponsor for LSU. Well, now you're having to balance of, okay, do you want to give your money as a title sponsor, or do you want to give your money into NIL? And I think that we're seeing them slowly put together things behind the scenes. I've talked to a lot of people who have a lot more money than the two of us, I should say. And they said, hey, look, quietly behind the scenes, we're putting it all together. We're being sponges as well. We're going to figure this out. But you saw teams like, we talked about this on the board, Oklahoma came out firing on NIL. They were like, we've got a collective. Here's how it's going to go.
Yep.
And it tanked. And you've got boosters now wanting their money back. And you've got boosters saying, we should have never done this. We should have thought about it more. We're not spending our money the right way. So I think there is something to be gained, at least, from not being first, but doing it right. And I think that's what LSU and a lot of these other schools are trying to figure out is, how do we attack this the right way? How do we make sure that kind of everything from licensing deals, because that's one thing, Louisiana, LSU is one of the few schools where these kids are able to use the marks, right? Where you can use LSU and all, the different logos, whatever it might be in your NIL stuff. Not every state has that. So state by state, we'll learn more about what's allowed. And I think then how does that pour into recruiting with, whether you're a kid's going to a school in Louisiana or Texas or Alabama or whatever it might be. It's going to be an interesting year, I would say. It's first time we've ever talked about NIL on a signing day podcast, but here we are. So
Yeah.
I imagine as we move forward, we'll learn more about it.
Yeah. And just to kind of put a bow on it, I think the February signees will probably look a lot more like a Jalen Davis Robinson. more so than a Harold Perkins.
So late bloomers.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of late bloomer type stuff. Guys you see that you offer late. I think that will kind of be what February kind of becomes because also we have to remember in December it's a much bigger player pool, right? It's let's say you're talking about 1,000 players, for 20 schools. Go
Right.
ahead. What
I
do you?
think it was like 85% of the top 300 players in the country, maybe more than that, had signed in December. So you're
Yeah,
right. Now all of a sudden you're the only tight end out there that this
exactly.
team wants.
Exactly. So that's the big point, I think. And when you talk about Trevante Citizen, maybe he goes from being one of 20 running backs that the top 10 schools are after to one of three, one of two, one of four. And that's where the NIL might come into it, where he is calling people and be like, what can you offer me here, there, there? And that's another aspect of it that's going to be interesting is players that hold out maybe looking for more money, like you mentioned early on. Players that hold out aren't just looking to weigh their options; they're looking to weigh the money as well. So that's going to be an interesting avenue moving forward. But from an NIL perspective, like you said, we got a lot to learn. A lot of people have a lot to learn, even the people with money. We'll continue to track it moving forward. But it is definitely a major piece of this signing day that we had to touch on to start off this pod. Now, if we look at the class as a whole and we look at the ranking of the class, let me pull it up real quick. I believe it was 12th in the country for the freshmen. Um, uh, and it boosted up obviously when you talk about adding Harold Perkins at the end. So with that in mind, I think 12th is about as good as you can ask from this group with 15 players. I mean, I haven't scrolled through, but I don't remember another top 20 team with only 15. I think there were a couple like in the teens maybe, but I think the top end of this class did a good job propping it up a bit, even though the depth obviously is not where you want it to be. But 12th overall, I have no complaints. I think that's about as good as you can ask for from LSU.
No, it is. And you look through, I mean, Oregon went through a coaching change. They had 15 commit signees as well out of high school. They're ranked 25th.
Mm-hmm.
I could go through Miami, for instance, had a number of coaching changes, similar number of commits. They ranked 15th. So when you get into, like, for instance, LSU, I'm looking at my screen for those who are watching this, and I'm not looking at the camera.
You good?
LSU was 12, Clemson was 11, and they had 20 commits. LSU had 15. So, and obviously how these point totals work is as you add guys, you get more points. So it's not a bad finish at all, as you noted. I mean, to be almost into the top 10 in a high school ranking when you only signed 15 guys and you did it through a coaching, wholesale coaching changes, coming off back-to-back 500 seasons, I guess, in the regular season. And then this past year, losing in a bowl game in the first losing season since 1999. So you throw all that into the mix and all of a sudden you feel really good about that. Now, what I've liked and talk about now, though, is when you go to 24/7 and if you bring up your team rankings or whatever, so it'll bring you to the landing page and you've got your high school thing, but it'll say recruit. Now you can toggle that switch and go down to transfer rankings and then overall rankings, which combine your recruits, your transfer portal signees, yes, and give you this picture of the overall class, which I think right now in the transfer portal era, that's almost like the go-to ranking, because if LSU is going to sign 13 or 15 high school kids and 12 transfer portal kids, well, I want to know where that ranks against everybody else who's signing high school and transfer kids. And, it all counts the same when those guys get to go out there and be on the field together in a year. They're ranked third behind USC and Ole Miss in transfer portal rankings, which I think USC getting Caleb Williams and Ole Miss getting Jackson Dart, among other guys. Really, obviously.
I got it on the screen now. Look at that.
Oh, my man is sharing rankings. Okay, there you go. So this looks – okay, that's the overall ranking. So this would be a combo. Yeah. What you're seeing here of – yes, that's right. I was on the okay, so this is that's the overall. So this is a combo of high school and transfer portal rankings. You've got A&M at number 1. That's obviously based off their high school class. Bama much the same, though Bama added Eli Ricks, for instance. That was a big one. They got a couple other big transfers. Mm-hmm. Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and then LSU at number 6. So if you're telling me that you're going to have to go back-to-back seasons without a winning record, you're going to have to fire your whole entire staff essentially mid-season, and they were sort of lame ducking it all the way until December when Brian Kelly gets announced. And even then, you're going to have to go through a month of January where your D coordinator gets denounced, but he's still in the NFL playoffs. So he's not actually there to help you recruit on the weekends. And you've just kind of hired everyone and put them on the road for the first time in January. And you've got the number 6 class in the country. I think they did a really good job on the high school front, no doubt. And we talked about all this in December, which is when they signed the bulk of their high school class, and important pieces like Walker Howard and Will Campbell and Emory Jones and Quincy Wiggins, all these guys in state you end up getting. And now they finish up with guys like Harold Perkins and Davis Robinson at the second signing day. But in between that point, like in between December's early signing period and in between February's National Signing Day, the traditional one, they spent about a month where Matty B, it seemed there was no rest for the weary for you, because we had you doing the breakdowns on transfer portal additions. They were knocking down like a transfer a day at one stretch. I mean, they had added like 8 in 8 days in one stretch of the middle of January. But when you end up doing that, you're looking at the transfer rankings now, 12 commits. You can kind of look up and down the whole month of January. They were just landing guys out of the portal. That went a far way to not just, like, if you want to say like saving this recruiting class during a transition period or whatever it is, building it out. They needed to address the depth on the team. I mean, again, 39 scholarship players suited up in that Kansas State game. And they got their teeth kicked in by a Kansas State team that shows up with 80-something scholarship players and runs the football all over them. So you need to get back to where you're at full strength. You've got depth. You don't have guys bailing left and right. And I think that the mix of transfers in high schools players was just what they needed, because you fill a lot of holes. They're not long-term solutions, but the portal allows you to go out there and address certain need positions, whether it's a starter, whether it's some depth. And ultimately, they signed right now 12 transfer guys. Every position has signed a player except kicker and tight end. And kicker would have been, they took a true freshman. You don't really need one. I think they'll probably get a PWO at some point. But you're hoping Nathan Dybert there, your freshman kicker, can get it done. And then tight end, I think that they will be spending a spot on the tight end at some point in the transfer portal. It's just about somebody going in that they like and going after them, because that's a need position. But to be able to hit on every other position in the portal, and some multiple times, like corner is a massive need. Well, you got multiple guys. O-line, you lose 4 or 5 starters. Well, you got multiple guys. So I really liked what they did in short order there, right? Of building up through the transfer portal, hitting on who you can hit on the recruiting trail, trying to close strong, being able, you lose some in-state guys, well, then you go pop a Harold Perkins. So I liked ultimately through a transition what they were able to do. It'll be interesting, obviously, with a full year of the staff being able to recruit kids, what the 2023 class might look like. And we would assume you'd want to be right back into the top 5 of the high school rankings, because that's where LSU's always been, right there with, A&M and Georgia and Bama and Ohio State. It's sort of a top 5 team pretty consistently. So we'll see where it goes. No doubt, I would have if I'm LSU, other than the understanding of, hey, we can't let Louisiana guys go to Bama and A&M every year. And they were the state got rated a bit this year, but that's understandable. It had these 500 seasons. You have a coaching change. You get it. Move forward, put your team back together, and then try to focus on building that fence up moving forward.
Yeah. One thing that I've heard a decent amount just from social media is how much weight can we put into, some people are like, okay, well, they have the 6th overall class, but how much weight can we really put into that? Because, that maybe doesn't hold up in the long term, transfer portal, all that stuff. There's some questions about that. To me, I think it holds a lot of water. I think having this number 6 class and having the number 3 transfer portal class is huge, because they're not just going out and getting guys that maybe could start or maybe could help them. They're getting guys that are legitimately going to start and going to be good SEC players. Like they aren't getting scrubs at this point. So that's what I want to make sure everybody understands, is that the portal to me is huge. Like the freshman class, yes, it's going to set up the future, all that stuff, but they didn't have an option when it came to the freshman class. They did not have a choice. Like they tried to recruit as well as they could. They tried to get Jacoby Matthews. They tried to get all these guys, but there's only so much they could do. When you're talking transfer portal, that's what they had control over. That's when they came in at the end of the season and guys just started entering the transfer portal. That's what they had control over. And they did a great job with that. They have the number 3 transfer portal class, and that's only because they didn't sign a Jackson Dart or a Quinn Ewers, right? That's the only thing keeping those teams above LSU at this point. So I I look at this and I'm gonna have a transfer ranking though soon on the site, not on YouTube this time, um but damn, man, they did a great job, and I think that holds a lot of water to me. Just when I look at this team moving forward, is that they are comfortable adding at positions of need in the future. So that's my kind of rant on the rankings.
Yeah, and I think we'll close out here before we move on to the next segment. But I think people also say, which is fair, right? Yeah, okay, the transfer portal rankings have you as the number 3 transfer class in the country, but they don't take into account how many guys you lost to the portal, right? And unless you lost a number of guys to the portal, I would look back at the portal and say they lost 3 guys that you would consider that stung them or that hurts in what your Eli Ricks and McGlothern. So you've lost Ricks to Bama and McGlothern to Arkansas. Yeah. And then your starting quarterback in Max Johnson goes to A&M.
Yeah.
So I would certainly look. They lost other guys, Trey Palmer,
we'll see, Deion Smith. We'll see how that plays.
We'll see what's up with Deion Smith.
Yeah.
But Max, and look, people will say, well, you can have your little Max bashing or whatever you want on the side here. That's not part of the conversation. He was the starter, but now you bring Miles Brennan back. You get a year of him. I don't know if you call that a wash or what, with Max about to be a junior. Max obviously has a couple years left to play. But you get Brennan back for a year, then you move on to Nussmeier, Walker Howard. I think LSU fans are going to be fine with that. Is everything they added in the portal as good as Ricks and McGlothern? I mean, probably not. Ricks and McGlothern are 2 of the better corners that are out there, and it sucks that you had to lose them. But that's just the portal era you're living in. And, you try to go out there now and say, all right, you've added a handful of kids at the corner spot. A guy like Jarrett Converse, for instance, has started like 40-something straight games. Like, he's got more experience than Ricks and McGlothern combined. So you hope he, plays a lot of football. You did all your breakdowns on guys like Mekhi Garner. You bring in Greg Brooks, who can play a little bit of a nickel. You hope that the corner spot will be good enough for this year, but you also understand that when you take that kind of hit and you lose Stingley to the draft and you only sign one guy in with Terrence Welsh early, I view Jordan Allen as sort of a kind of a utility knife back there at the DB spot. But you add Davis Robinson, that you also view him as someone that you want to develop and all that. Then you understand moving into next year, we're not going to be as good at corner as we probably normally would be if you're a fan. And that's okay. You understand it before the year begins. The coaching staff knows it. They're going to have to address it through recruiting and the portal moving forward. But at the end of the day, I look at, if I'm really only thinking they got lost, 3 or 4 guys maybe that were like going to play and were impact guys for you, they added a lot more than that. Like, I count way more than 3 or 4 guys that are transferring in that I expect to be starting or have pretty big roles in the team. So I liked what they did. And as I mentioned, that guys who could be starting, a nice segue. We'll play a little game here. We'll do a little exercise. You actually, I wouldn't call it cheating. You've just done your homework. You've already ranked these guys, so I'll let you pick off your list unless you're trying to deviate. Though you can mix high school kids in here too.
I'll try to be
creative. But let's go offense, defense, special teams. Of one guy we think that they signed, whether high school or transfer, best odds to start immediately next year. Where should we start?
Or including transfers?
Let's do transfers in high school. Just put them all into one thing. We're just going to pick guys.
Okay.
You want me to go first, or we can go position by, or not position by position? We can go
defensively. I'll take Jarek Bernard Converse just in this draft. I'll take him first with the number 1 pick.
So he's got you. Are you going on experience here? Where are you rolling?
Yeah, I'm 100%
straight starts. I mean, that's
100% just straight. Also, at this moment, I mean, they could add another corner, but at this moment, they have basically 2 corners who I think could start. Like, him and Mekhi Gardner are the only 2 I think could possibly start right now. Unless I don't know. Unless if Jay Ward drops out to safe corner, I guess. But I think Converse Bernard is probably the one that's probably the most for sure starter. A lot of these transfers I look at it as for sure starters. Maybe not a lot. Maybe like 3, 4, 3.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. It's me on defense. I'll select in the defensive backfield again, but I'll go with, and I could go with either Arkansas edition here, but I'll go Joe Fuchsia just because I think that Fuchsia is a guy, he's played a lot, and him and Greg Brooks are both great players coming from Arkansas. I think Fuchsia is a guy who's played a ton. He's made a lot of plays, even against LSU, like in big SEC games. Safety is not like for instance, they have Jay Ward and Major Burns coming back, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got Jordan Tolles, you've got a veteran in Todd Harris, and then you've got this big group of younger guys, Sage Ryan and Davis and Langlois, that you're excited to see. I just think Fuchsia brings so much experience, and we've seen, I mean, Jay Ward gets banged up. Major Burns is out for a long period of time. So you can't always rely on all these guys being healthy. I like Fuchsia. I think he's coming in here with a year to go with the expectation that he'll be starting. And I think he'll certainly compete over the offseason to make sure he's playing a ton. So Converse and Fuchsia, I think, are pretty good picks.
For the freshmen, just if we want to throw a freshman out there, it's between two players for me. And I think the obvious one is Harold Perkins. I think could have a chance to start. I'm not going to guarantee that he starts, but I think he has a quality chance to start because I think he could step on campus and be second or third best linebacker on the team. Like I look at him in a way that I think we want to look at Mike Jones. Like, and that's not a complete dig to Mike Jones because I think Jones is probably better as a coverage guy, but Harold Perkins is and he could step in an outside linebacker if he needed to and just fly around and create havoc, and I would love that.
Yeah, he's a great off-ball linebacker. I think. I think he and Tolan are really good as well. But I think
Yes.
Perkins has probably got him edged out a little bit just in terms of readiness and natural athleticism and all of that. But two good high school linebackers there. If we're picking one out of the high school ranks as well, I'd pick Harold Perkins.
Yeah.
And I love Quincy Wiggins. I just think he's played 2 years of football. One being in a pandemic year. I think his upside is more long term than anything, and I think it'll be really good. But yeah, I'd rock Perkins day one.
Yeah. For offense, rather. For offense, and I'm not including Miles Brennan in this. I don't know if you wanted to, but I'll leave Brennan out of
Yeah,
it.
that's sort of easy. That's guaranteed.
Yeah, that's kind of
In
easy. I'm
my
looking over.
mind, I think.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking over here because that's where I have my transfer rankings on my whiteboard over here.
Okay.
I'll let you go first on this one.
All right, I'll pick an offensive lineman. I'll go Miles Frazier. I think that would be the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
He may be, let me glance up and down, the highest ranked transfer. No, Mekhi Wingo, the D lineman out of Missouri, is. But yes, as a solid mid-range 4-star, Miles Frazier out of Florida International, 6'5", 305. He's played got plenty of starts. He comes in with the ability to be at offensive tackle. He moves well. I think he was the highest graded offensive tackle in PFF to end the year last year.
He was up
Or
there,
maybe,
yeah.
that was like at least on the list of guys who were returning and not going to the NFL draft or whatever. So you lose 4 or 5 starters. There's got to be no doubt in my mind that Frazier would be one that's going to come in and play. And position wise, I guess I don't know exactly where that would. I can't predict if he's going to be the left tackle or the right tackle or whatever it might be. But I do think he ends up starting.
Yeah. I don't know 100% where to go. I don't want to pick Kyron Lacey, even though some people think he's going to start. He could start. I mean, I don't know. It's such a tough receiver room to kind of break down. Tremont Shorts, I think, is probably the safest answer here, interior offensive lineman. But I'm gonna go kind of crazy. I think. I don't know. I'm gonna go Landon Ibieta. I'm gonna take Landon Ibieta.
Wow.
We'll start a couple games. So I'm not gonna say he's gonna start all the games. I think he gets on the field a couple times.
Fill us in, my brother. Fill us in.
Hey, first I'm gonna plug the YouTube again, the YouTube video earlier in the day. But man, this dude is fast. He is like and it's easy to say a recruit's fast, right? Like it's easy just to be like, oh, he's got great speed and that projects well. Like we've done that with a lot of players because a lot of these guys are fast, but this dude looks like the fastest player in this class. Like I just watch his huddle, man. He gets the ball and he's gone, like gone. I think also you mentioned special teams, and I think from a punt returner or a kick returner angle, I think there's a very viable avenue of him getting on the field.
Is he your special teams answer too? Are you doubling down?
He's both. He is both. Landon Ibieta fan club right here, right now. Landon Ibieta is going to make some plays as a true freshman. if we come back on this a year from now and he hasn't touched the field, I'll look like an idiot.
Well,
But
shame on
damn,
Brian Kelly then, because they've got a guy like that sitting there. Yeah.
yeah, I know what I'm talking about here, Brian. Get him on the
Yes.
field. All right,
Yes.
he's amazing. He's
Okay.
amazing.
I
That's
I
my
like that. I like that. Okay,
yeah.
so you passed up the transfers and took a high school guy, so no need
Yes.
for us to even address the high school range.
100%.
I'd actually say, and this like so many people I think are going to expect Will Campbell to be the first offensive lineman to the field of this high school crop. Don't sleep on Emory Jones. I
Yeah.
don't think, especially if it's on the interior. I know at Catholic he played a lot of
Yeah.
offensive tackle, but I think he's a guard at the next level. They're going to have to find a center. I'm not sure who that's going to be ultimately, but Emory Jones is the real deal. I love him. I think he's going to be a really good player. I love Campbell too, but I think that Jones and Campbell will make a nice run to see which one of them can get out there first. But
Yeah.
keep an eye on Jones. And he won't be there this spring, and Campbell will be. So Campbell gets a head start in that regard. But if Jones can stick with it through the spring and like get here this summer and kind of get into the strength and conditioning aspect of it all and then into the film room, I think that he'll be a pretty good one. Not sure if it's next year, but at some point those guys will be starting, and I've got a lot of faith in Emory Jones. Well, and actually I would have said this, that special teams usually like, well, they only sign one guy, so it's really easy to pick who that would be. They actually signed a lot of special teams guys between high school and the transfer portal, and you're throwing out there returners already to be in the mix here. So to give the rundown, they signed a long snapper out of East Carolina in Slade Roy. They signed a punter out of Notre Dame in Jay Bramplett, and they signed a kicker out of Michigan, high school player in Nathan Dibert. And you've also got obviously return specialists like Landon Ibieta. There's a chance maybe all these guys end up starting in different spots.
They have some competition though, do they not? Like Slade Roy has some competition.
So Slade Roy and Quentin Skinner are two scholarship long snappers, so competition there. You're bringing Jay Bramplett on at punter, and then you've already got a punter on roster right now. Even though he's never started before, and Avery Adkins kind of took that role on this past year.
Well, is Peyton Todd still on the roster?
Yeah, so Peyton Todd being the punter.
Well,
and
I remember they talked about they talked up Peyton Todd a bit, so that's why I was like, oh, maybe.
Yeah, and he was the number one punter coming out of high school, just like Bramplett was in his class. So you got a little competition there, and then at kicker, I would just assume that Dibert is going to take over for Cade York, unless they're bringing on somebody with one of these 5 scholarship spots, or just like a preferred walk-on that's maybe kicked before somewhere. I've heard they were looking at guys like that. So yes, actually some competition. Man, I guess I'm going to roll with Dibert because he's the only one who doesn't have direct competition right now, it seems, that's been added through the portal. So I'll go with Michigan, Heartland, Michigan's Nathan Dibert. McMahon is obviously not here anymore, but was a great, special teams coordinator for a long time with the Saints, NFL background. But when he got to LSU, they went from like Cole Tracy to Cade York, now to recruiting Nathan Dibert. Obviously, he did really well finding Avery Adkins. He turned Zach Von Rosenberg into a multi-year starter at punter. So he had recruited Quentin Skinner as a long snapper. He was the number 1 long snapper in the country. So he clearly had an eye for special teams players, and he had circled Dibert last summer, I guess, when they brought everybody in, and he said, this is the guy we want. They went after him, and they got us commit. So I think he'd be the guy that I'm pegging as the best chance to be the immediate starter, just because I think the job's sort of been not given to him, but he was recruited here to take that job, and I think he takes it. Yeah.
All right. That was fun. I almost threw out Mason Taylor on offense just because in case they don't sign any other tight ends.
No tight ends, my brother.
If they just don't get any more tight ends, they're just like, Mason Taylor. Throw him out there.
Okay, so then that's a good segue, right? That's another segue. So the last thing we had written down was they have 5 spots, Matty B. 5 open spots. You almost wrote down a tight end because they need one. Is that where – and people are going to ask, like, how do you use these final 5 spots? Well, pretty much all the high school guys now are in the rearview mirror. You're waiting on the transfer portal, and the LSU staff every day is sitting there just like clicking refresh. And as soon as a guy comes up at a position you want, you check him out, you look at his transcript, you get a feel for him, and then you decide if you're going after him or not. are you starting there? That's where I'd start. Tight end has to be my number one. They've got one guy coming back on scholarship in Cole Taylor. Taylor got beaten out by a walk-on in Jack
Hey,
Mashburn last year.
and
And
Jack
then,
Mashburn's not a walk-on anymore, though.
well,
Don't
that's
forget.
well, yeah, he got handed a scholarship.
Yeah.
So, and then Mason Taylor signed in December, the son of obviously Hall of Famer Jason Taylor. That's not enough tight ends. I know this like for a fact. LSU is monitoring the transfer portal daily to see who's out there that they can grab at tight end. Maybe someone goes in over the next couple months, but that's where I begin. And from there, I'll let you rank your positions. I don't have the depth chart pulled up right now, but I could just do it in my head. Linebacker, I'd still be trying to find somebody
Yes.
else. Even though I just got Harold Perkins, I'm still looking. They signed West Weeks out of Virginia, a transfer portal guy, and then obviously Tolan in December. But beyond Micah Baskerville, and then you mentioned Mike Jones, you don't have anybody there that's ever like Greg Penn played in the bowl game. That was it.
Yeah.
So you don't know what Josh White and Sampa bring. We really don't even know yet how many linebackers House is going to want on the field at all times, or what a rotation might look like. So for me, it'd be tight end number one, linebacker number two, and man, I don't know. I'm still in the camp of if I see a cornerback go in
Yeah.
there that's
I'm
good,
going
I'm getting
corner.
him.
Yeah, I'm going corner as definitely number 3 there because even though in theory, like I said, I like Mekhi Gardner, um, and I like Tariq Converse Bernard as the 2 starters, you still need some depth pieces as we've seen the past couple years, right? Whether it's injuries or whatever else. Um, and these guys have been reliable starters on their teams, Gardner and Converse Bernard, but still you need other guys to rotate in at times. And they don't have that depth. I mean, I Ray Darius Jones and Demarius McGee like had their moments at times, but I don't really expect them to, be able to hold their own for long stretches of time, and I don't want to. So I think you go out there, find a corner, and it's for a similar reason at linebacker. Like you just need depth. You need quality depth. You don't just need depth. You need quality depth. So I'd go corner. Would you look offensive line at all, or do we just really trust this offensive line now that they've added Frazier and Shorts?
I mean, they have a lot of pieces, but if I see one and I have a spot, I'm getting him because beyond. We're just presuming the two guys they got out of the transfer portal are going to be good and going to be starters. Even then, you're looking around and saying you can go up and down the road like Marlon Martinez, Xavier Hill, Doomerville, Garrett Dellinger. Trying to like think out loud of guys
There's
they
no
were
one that's
pushing.
there's no one that's like you're like, oh, this
Yeah,
guy
like
has
no doubt he's going
earned
to
this.
start. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
And if I see someone in the offense in the portal that's been like a center for a year or two somewhere and he's good,
Yes.
I would get him too.
Yeah.
Because right now they're about to have to teach somebody how to snap the football.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not
That
joking.
sounds
That's like
sounds not
I'm being
fun.
serious. I'm being serious.
I believe you. I believe you. So yeah, center
Okay, so
center.
so 5 spots, and we're thinking because I agree O line. So like O line, corner, linebacker, tight end.
Yes, that's 4. That's 4. Now, do you think they definitely like fill all 5 scholarship spots? Do you think they go out of their way to make sure they get them all 5?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they're going to take guys just to take them that ultimately are just going to be sitting on your roster and never play. So they'd have to be good enough. But yes, I think there'll be enough movement out there that at least 3 or 4 of these spots are filled. And like maybe if they have one left over and ultimately it doesn't get filled, it's not the end of the world. They're inching closer to being back over that 80 scholarship count anyways. So you're going to be nearing where you're about to be capped out. But yeah, I won't be surprised if all 5 get used if they stop at 3 or 4, just because that's where the target list ran out, and that's fine. But I don't think they're going to slow down on pushing or taking guys if they think they can play until that 5 number's up.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I think they're fine everywhere else. Defensive line, I'm looking at. I mean, I trust they have enough bodies at defensive line, even if they flirt with BJ Ojolari as like an outside linebacker, depending on the scheme, obviously. But I mean, I think they're pretty much fine there. But like you said, it could be for one of the spots, 1 or 2 of the spots. It could just be if they see a really good player, they just might be like, "Hey, I know we have enough receivers, I know we have enough running backs, but this
Well,
dude might be a stud."
and that's the highest transfer they have in their class, right? Makai Wingo. You wouldn't have said D tackle is somewhere we really need to figure things out. It's like we've got like Mason Smith and Roy and Guillory, and
Yeah,
even though you lost some veterans and guys like Logan and Neil Farrell and all them, you've got a lot of guys that are younger that are kind of emerging or waiting in the wings. You've got Joe Evans back, Bryce Langston. There's still guys that we haven't even seen that are playing there, but they're not going to turn him down. I mean, that's an freshman all SEC guy who has connections to your staff. And, he played high school football for Robert Steeples, who was one of the new hires. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think that if a best available comes up, you're going after him. And even if you have depth there, that's fine. I think that the more the merrier.
Yeah. Can never have too much depth on the defensive line. That much I do know. But yeah, I don't. Do you have anything else here we want to touch on before we get out?
I'm good to go, my friend. I'm good to go. I'm getting over this. I'm envisioning all the Landon Ibieta jerseys that are about to start selling with NIL deals after they hear the Matty B predictions. But I like it. I'm in on it.
Right. All the NIL companies just listening to the podcast be like, all right, write that down. Landon Ibieta.
That's the future is we're going to get people NIL deals and get them while they're sleepers. And then that company will thank us for it.
Like,
if they would have been listening to the podcast, they would have known that he would have been a starter.
I'm gonna clip this by like the game 7 of next year when he's like returned to punt for a touchdown, and I'm just gonna be like, I told y'all, Landon Ibieta, write it down. We'll see. I believe in him. Get him on the field, Brian.
What time do you think it was when you were watching Landon Ibieta's film? It was just 3:30 in the morning. It was a wide awake moment.
Oh, no. Well, the thing is, I first watched him obviously on the initial signing day in December.
Yeah, so in December.
And that's when I pulled an all-nighter as well. And so that's where I was like probably up at probably up 2, 3 in the morning, probably, if I had to guess. Landon Ibieta.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
Great 3 a.m. player that you're just like, that's my guy now.
Yeah, he's my guy. I think I gave him in my superlatives when I handed him out. Let's see where I had. There he is. Oh, I gave him the underdog title. The guy who's not getting any pub right now. Yes. Thankfully, I ran that article before now. He's no longer an underdog. He's actually being projected to start. So, yes. And hey, look, he's the only high school receiver they signed. So he's got to carry that title on his own.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out, but there's a good plug. Check out Shay's Go 24/7 Awards, the class superlatives. Check out my video on our YouTube. I also wrote a story about the tight end situation. Looked at the portal, looked at kind of like a big board, but also wasn't really sure where they can go from here. Included some interesting tidbits in that as well. So check out all that stuff on Go 24/7. Become a subscriber if you're not already. If you enjoyed the video, leave us a like, subscribe, share, send it. Leave us some comments. What do you think about the class? And yeah, we thank you all for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter right here at Matthew Brune _ and at Shea Dixon. But we thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to y'all later.